Again, welcome to our Health for All program webinar series 2021. I'm Christine Sawinski. I'm the project coordinator for the Health for All program. The Health for All program is one of the variety of programs aligning with the Partnership of Healthy Communities mission to mobilize the university's research, educational, and public service capacities in collaboration with community partners to address health inequities. Joining us today, we have our UD faculty and staff represented by 5% and our community represented by 95%. So thank you all for joining us today. We really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us. I want to let you know a few technical details. Our audience lines will remain muted throughout the presentation. We ask that you use the Q&A box for any questions, and we will address those following the presentation. And any technical issues at any time, please submit those through the chat. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available for viewing after today's presentation on our website at healthforallde.org. Also, we will send you an evaluation to complete after the webinar, and we ask that you do complete that because we do use the information for future programming. Again, I'm Christine Sawinski, project coordinator for the Health for All program. And I just want to take a moment to let you know that this program is a collaboration between the Lieutenant Governor's Office, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield Delaware, and the University of Delaware's Partnership for Healthy Communities. And this program is funded by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Delaware. This program enables faculty, staff, and students to support improvements in health outcomes in Wilmington's most vulnerable neighborhoods through community health services outreach. If you'd like to know additional information about us, please visit us on our website. We also have some upcoming webinars that we would like to invite you to join us. In 2 weeks on Thursday, April 29th, we will be talking about work-life balance. And today we have Dr. Brianna Hout, who will be speaking to us about being good to yourself and practicing self-care. So it is my great pleasure at this moment to introduce you to Bree. Bree, thank you so much for being with us today. And again, thank you to our audience for joining. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Christine. And so nice to see some folks joining us for this discussion today about self-care, which I feel like is something that is, if you came to the last webinar that I did, very related to the stress and healthy coping webinar that we did last time, and also something that's just coming up a lot. I feel like self-care as a psychologist is something I'm hearing and telling a lot of people that they need to engage in, but it's such an amorphous, big topic, I think, that it's worth us having a discussion about it. And also, I'm hoping that you'll leave today thinking about some ways that you can better just take care of yourself. So that's sort of my goal for today. Here we go. And I say this every time, but if you have any questions or want to participate in a more interactive way, please feel free to use the chat, and I'll have Christine keep checking that. If there's anything that comes up, or questions that you have, or experiences that you want to share, it makes it much more interesting when I can hear from you all too. So don't be shy about that as I go through some of the points that I want to make today. So what you can expect, I always like to set a little bit of an agenda for what we're going to do, is talk about why you think we might need self-care, some of the reasons why, and some of them are going to be very related to the stress conversation that I had the last time I was here. I'm going to define self-care, although it's difficult to define because it's very personal from individual to individual. Give you just some ideas about some self-care activities that you might engage in, and talk a little bit about the no longer elephant in the room, COVID-19, that's just completely dominated people's lives for now over a year, and how some strategies you might use to deal with sort of some of the pandemic fatigue that a lot of the patients I'm seeing now are really experiencing. And I want you to leave today, but with brainstorming some of your own ideas and kind of creating your own self-care plan, so that after we're done, you'll have some really good ideas to get started. If this is something you do already, great. Maybe you can think about some new way to even enhance what you're doing, or some other aspect of your life that self-care might improve. Or maybe if it's not something you've thought about, or you're really busy and you're not sure exactly where to get started, you'll have an idea of some 5-minute thing that you can do today that you can use to kind of practice taking care of yourself. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point. The last thing that I'd like to do is create a jam board together, and I'll explain to you what that is when we get to the end, where we can all kind of come together and have this shared self-care experience today before the end of this presentation, and really get some ideas from each other about what self-care means to you. And again, I feel like it's such a personal thing that hearing from all of you who are here today will be a great way to share with the rest of the group some out of the box maybe ideas for how you all take care of yourself. Okay. So starting out, I want to talk about why you might need self-care. And there are many, many reasons why. And I don't really want to get into a huge conversation about stress, since that's what we did last time. And also talking about stress seems to stress people out. But really, we all, just as human beings, no matter what you're doing, if you're working, if you're in school, if you're a parent, or you're a young person, experience some kind of stress in your life. And I'm not talking about the good stress, which there is some good stress that just motivates us to do our best, but really more that negative stress that we all experience, and the daily grind of just living, getting up in the morning, taking care of your responsibilities, going to work, especially through this past year, has been really challenging for most people. And it can really start to get you down or really contribute to your mood not being super great if you're not doing a great job at taking care of yourself. This is also especially true for people who are caregivers of other individuals. Not doesn't mean kids. It doesn't necessarily have to mean being a parent, but if you care for anybody else in your life, that can be a really high stress thing to do. And self-care kind of arose out of this idea that those who are caring for others need to take care of themselves. Also very true of those in healthcare profession over this past year, seeing a lot of burnout, and people just kind of having too much on their plate and contributing to just this overwhelming feeling that they don't know what to do or how to cope with these day-to-day problems. And really, the different types of stress, whether it be acute, that's kind of happening right now, like if you know you have to give a presentation for your work later today and you're stressed out about it, or if it's chronic stress, like you have some kind of a person in your life that's really difficult to deal with, or you have a relationship that's kind of really challenging to manage, or if you have some sort of chronic health condition that contributes to your stress, these things can really eat away at you and make it difficult for you to truly care for both yourself and the other people around you. And I don't want to get, again, too into the stress conversation since we did it before, but I want you to just sort of think about what some of your high stresses are, because when we think about self-care, it's valuable to know what sorts of aspects of your life are the ones that you're struggling with the most, and those are the ones that some sort of self-care activity might be able to help you with. So stress is caused by a number of different things. Some of them are external. Right now, the pandemic is certainly something that we can't really control. That's definitely an external stressor that's eating away at a lot of people. And there's also a lot of internal things that could be keying up your stress. Again, some within our control and some that are not. So it's important to kind of as you're thinking about this, and ultimately we will, I promise, end it on a lighter note where you're not just thinking about how stressed out you are. But think about what aspects of your life are the ones that you tend to have the most struggle with. And that should really help you to kind of start thinking about where you might want to prioritize your self-care. Okay. Another thing that could contribute to you needing to take a little time to yourself is struggling with relationships. And I don't mean just romantic ones, but just relationships with other people in your life, which leads a lot of folks to have challenges and just significant stress not knowing how to deal with that or feeling overwhelmed about that. And I put this little graphic from, if any of you have ever flown, you all know you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help a younger person to put their mask on, or someone else who needs help. So really the idea of self-care is that if you want to relate meaningfully to other people and have positive relationships with others, you really need to take better care of yourself and manage your own relationship with yourself, which I know sounds a little hokey. But that's the only way you're going to ever be able to truly enjoy that aspect of your life. So if you take care of yourself, it can really help you to better engage with others, improve your mood and your ability to relate to others, Allow you to get some time alone. For those of you who live maybe in a crowded house or have kids, that 5 minutes to yourself could make all the difference to you. So having that time to sort of reflect and recenter in whatever way works for you can be really helpful in helping you manage, again, these day-to-day and chronic things that are happening for you. Okay. Stress also, unfortunately, has a lot of negative things that can contribute to your own health. And right now, not just as a result of the pandemic, but more people than ever are having anxiety and depression, significant levels of it. They're also having a lot of physical health issues, not just related to COVID-19, but in general, we're less healthy than we used to be. And chronic stress might be some of the cause of that. It can cause weight gain, fatigue. It can cause a lot of other chronic health issues like heart problems or high blood pressure. So the more that we're stressed out, the less likely our health is going to be good, and the more effort you have to put into taking care of yourself. So again, I'm not trying to harp on you're all too stressed out. I'm sure some of you are not, but it can be really useful to kind of try and manage some of that for your physical well-being as well. And I am also feeling that a lot of folks are having this difficulty disconnecting right now. And what I mean by that is we're constantly bombarded. If you carry around a phone, I mean, I got mine right here. You're constantly getting notifications or seeing the news or getting texts from friends or looking on YouTube or Facebook or Insta or whatever it is that you're connected to. And it's hard to turn that off. Many people sit with their phones on their bedside, and maybe it's really tempting to look at before you go to bed. And it's just hard to kind of turn that off and take the time to really focus on yourself and practice being in the moment. So it's important now more than ever to be able to be mindful about that and kind of make some decisions to give yourself a break and just slow down a little bit. Put your phone in a basket for dinner time or after dinner. Make sure you stay away from screens or read a book or do something else that's gonna stop you from kind of getting addicted to the news or getting in a social media cycle where you're comparing yourself to other people. And it's just might help you to feel, again, improve your mood a little bit. And finally, when you're experiencing this kind of significant stress, it can really lead to simple things being really hard to do. So I don't know, all of you have probably experienced like a sleepless night or a night where you were anxious about something the next day. And then everything that happens the next day before whatever you're anxious about is really hard to do. It's hard to take a shower. It's hard to get ready. It's hard to just manage the day to day because your stress and your worry is so high and you're so keyed up and maybe wound up that it's hard to just do activities of daily living. So the more that you're allowing yourself to get caught up in this high energy, quick paced world, to get caught up in the digital stuff and social media or the news, it can make it harder for you to actually live and function day to day. So that's why self-care really can help, and you can see how easy it is. And I'm sure all of you are thinking now of experiences you've had in your own life that maybe are contributing to some of this feeling overwhelmed or feeling stressed out. And when we don't care for ourselves, we don't take that time, we not only get those overwhelming feelings, but we may start to experience something at a clinical level, whether it be a physical health problem. Stress can definitely cause a lot of physical damage and long-term damage if you don't do anything about it. When your body's keyed up and stressed out, it's releasing all of these hormones and turning on fight or flight for you, which is not something that's meant to be turned on forever. And that can contribute to a lot of significant health problems. You also might find yourself actually feeling clinically anxious or clinically depressed and maybe needing a little bit more support for that. It might contribute to you having a hard time managing your relationships with your partner, with your siblings, with your kids, because you just don't know how to manage those feelings when you're feeling this overwhelmed. And this day-to-day just fatigue and the monotony of it when things aren't changing, especially now. I've seen a lot of patients over the past year too who are now have transitioned to working from home and have a really tough time with the boundaries between work and home, since we're now working in our homes. and spending a lot more time doing things like we're doing now, being on Zoom or being on Zoom meetings and connecting to people in ways that are less gratifying or satisfying for people, can really just make it a struggle to manage what you're doing day to day. Your work might suffer, your school might suffer. So that's why it's really important to kind of refocus on self-care. And now that we're kind of through the doom and gloom of that, I want to define what self-care is and what it means. And this is a dictionary definition of what it is. And I don't know if any of them are really perfect definitions, because I think that self-care is such a deeply personal, meaningful thing that we all kind of have to discover for ourselves and try and practice what works for you. But this third definition is probably my favorite. And that is looking at these different domains of self-care, these different aspects of your life that self-care might be able to help you improve. So it's acting in ways that genuinely improve your well-being and taking care of yourself at a fundamental level in all these sorts of domains. Your physical health and wellness, your emotional health and wellness, the way you relate to other people and your relationships, and this idea of spiritual wellness, which doesn't have to mean religious, but just rather how you relate to your own self and you kind of pamper yourself and your soul in some sort of meaningful way. And the self-care at an even broader level is kind of just getting to know yourself and what works for you. And it's important to be able to have those conversations with yourself. You have more conversations with yourself than you ever will with anybody else in your life. So cultivating that relationship, just taking care of it, is a way that you can actually improve the way that you relate to the world and ultimately express the things that are meaningful and valuable to you. So think about that. Think about sort of these different domains of your life and ways that maybe you'd like to improve them, or ones that you think you're doing really great at, and what makes it so. Some of it also has to do with your personality and the ways that you relate to others. I'm a true extrovert, and I find that the relationship domain for me is easy because what fills up my emotional and gives me strength and fills my cup is just seeing my friends and family in some sort of way, whether it's a phone call or a Zoom or now doing socially distant gatherings in the park or something like that. I know that for me, that's the most meaningful form of self-care because it's the one that gives me the biggest bang for my buck. And for you all, it might be taking a minute to think about, what is it about me, or what are my strengths? What are the things that are the most meaningful to me to help you develop your own self-care rituals? And I know, again, that self-care is popping up everywhere. I think I was reading an article not long ago saying that the actual Google searches for the term self-care is significantly up, like either doubled or tripled in the last 5 or so years, which is amazing. So people are hearing about this outside of, going to therapy, which is maybe where I would see people, and thinking about ways that they can better care for themselves. And not only self-care, there's these other sort of umbrella terms for it that come up about, like caring for yourself to care for others. If you Google self-care quotes, there are about 1 billion of those little Instagram worthy things, and you'll see a couple of them in the rest of my presentation, that are kind of inspirational and thoughtful ways to just motivate yourself to kind of be better in caring for your own well-being and needs. And the idea that just like putting the mask on yourself before someone else, you have to take care of yourself so you have space to take care of others. And this, again, might mean many different things to different people. So I'm going to kind of talk through a couple of different examples of how you can take care of yourself and your well-being and your own needs through these different domains. When you take care of yourself, this is also a good benchmark to kind of know if your self-care is working. Ask yourself, do I feel healthy and well? Am I well rested? Do I wake up in the morning and feel energized for the day? Feel like I have some goals and things that I'm going to accomplish? Do I feel like I can take care of others if I'm in a caregiving responsibility today? Or does it feel like that's a significant burden for me? I feel like I can go to work today and accomplish the things I need to accomplish at work, or I can go to school today and learn something and be truly engaged in that. And really, when you wake up in the morning, do you have a list of things you need to get done, and are you able to do them? Or is it really a struggle? And if you're finding that any of those things are a struggle, it might be just a sign that you need to recalibrate a little bit and think about some other ways that you might be able to improve your self-care and get yourself refocused on the things that are more meaningful or matter to you. Okay. And again, this is I liked this graphic because it broke it down even further in these different domains of self-care. And I've put about 1,000 different strategies for self-care, hoping that some, I'm not going to read them all to you, but hoping that some of them maybe pop up for you and are meaningful for you. And the reason why I liked this graphic too was it talked about some things that maybe feel more like a burden, like your work or your finances, or even for some people, the physical one can be really challenging because a lot of people don't really enjoy working out. But I see a ton of people saying, like, going to yoga for my self care today, or going for running for my self care today. And they feel like that will be helpful and useful for them, but maybe it's not something that they love doing. Or the financial one. Finances and money are one of the most common struggles that I see people go through naturally. And something like taking some time in a day to work out your budget or plan for a vacation and how you might save up for it, or finding out what matters to you and what are your financial goals, does not sound like super fun self-care. But at the end of the day, after maybe a few weeks of trying that and having a little bit more money in your savings account, it might actually be the best form of self-care, because then maybe you can afford something that will truly make a difference in your mood or make you feel better. So as you're thinking about these different domains, again, just start to think about which ones of these are popping out at you, or maybe feeling like that's something I really want to work on, or that's something that I really need to improve. And that might help you define, when we get to your self-care brainstorming and management, what you might like to do. Okay. The space one is also very meaningful to me. I don't always practice what I preach, but I'm a big fan of having an organized Zen place to either work or sleep or relax. And that's not one that we think about often as something that could be self-care either. Okay, so just like it's important to define what self-care is, and you can probably already tell that self-care is a very amorphous, individual and meaningful thing for people, I also like to talk about what self-care isn't. And the number one thing that I hear from people when I kind of prescribe some sort of self-care relaxation activity is, I either don't have time for that, or I can't do that because I have responsibilities to other people. Especially moms that I talk to feel like I don't have time to do this and I can't do this and they can't do things without me and they need me. And it's selfish of me to want to take a day to do something for myself. But really, that's more of a function of us trying to deal with our own guilt around taking care of ourselves, because we live in a high pressure society that values people burning out for whatever reason. And the idols that we have are people that are kind of doing things that are unrealistic. So you see like a working mom who seems like she has everything put together. She comes to work, looks like $1,000,000, then has these beautiful pictures of her family and her children all dressed to the nines on her Facebook page or something like that. And we think, I wish that I could do that. And it's just not realistic to be able to accomplish that, or that even is a realistic picture of what things are. So instead of kind of feeling guilty about the things that you don't have or the things you want to accomplish, learning to kind of practice self-love and know that that you are taking care of yourself to better accomplish some of those goals or work towards things that are valuable or meaningful to you, can help you to let go of this idea that taking time for yourself is selfish or self-indulgent, or expensive. I think some people also see that as, I can't go spend several $100s at a spa for a day. And that's not what self-care is either. It might be something that's valuable for one person, but that doesn't have to be the way that self-care is presented. And this was a graphic that I found that's just another good idea to think about. Self-care is not an excuse also for not doing something that you need to do. And it's not an excuse for making you ultimately feel worse about yourself. So self-care doesn't mean you just kind of bail on things and decide you can't do them, or that you blow all your money because you think that that'll make you feel better, or that you set yourself up for failure by setting really unrealistic and unattainable goals and then not being able to do them. And I have a lot of, I've seen a lot of people who struggle with this side of things too, and feeling like they can't find a good balance between knowing when to say no, which is a really difficult skill, and going a little bit too far or hurting other people. So finding this balance where, and I think it's being appropriately assertive, which means respecting other people's needs while also taking care of yourself, is where you find that sweet spot with self-care. So it is not at all selfish to say, I need a mental health day from work and I need to take off today. However, if you're doing it constantly all the time, it might, and you're impacting other employees because they're having to cover for you, then it might be time to take a step back and reevaluate what other self-care needs that you might have. So there definitely is a sweet spot there where you don't have to feel guilty or worried that you're being selfish, but you can actually take time for yourself, know when to set those boundaries, and feel really good about doing it. And that's usually also my telltale sign for what good self-care is how do you feel after you've engaged in this activity? And it should be pretty good. It should feel like a nice break or something that's important to you. And ultimately, your goal is to find ways to engage in self-care every day if you can. And I don't mean, again, having a ridiculous spa day every day or planning some crazy trip that you take once a month that's really expensive, because that's not realistic. And tangible things might not even mean that that's what you need to do. But rather, how can you practice these sort of skills on a day-to-day basis and feel better and feel good and feel much better, more like you can engage in your daily life without this significant stress hanging over you. And the first one, again, that's the first domain I'll mention briefly, is this idea of physical self-care. So how do we care for our physical bodies? And you might have some exercise that you really love doing, or if you love being outside, it might be just taking a walk every day. And again, taking steps towards being more physically active and healthy doesn't mean some crazy exercise routine that's not attainable, but wherever you are at your level of fitness, how can you kind of just move around a little bit more each day or exercise a little bit in a way that helps you to feel better? I really miss, because I work from home most of the time now, being on campus, because I used to take regular walks around my office when the weather was nice, and even sometimes when the weather wasn't, to go down Main Street in Newark or grab a cup of coffee with one of my colleagues. So I have had to try to find ways to kind of schedule breaks to do the same thing in my own community. I invested in a treadmill so I would be able to walk sometimes in my own house. And that has really helped me to feel a little bit more connected to the things I used to do before. But it doesn't have to be, again, like some sort of investment in crazy fitness equipment or something like that to be physically healthy and well. And the benefits of regular exercise are also terrific, not just for feeling better, improving your mood, helping with your weight. And it's been proven that engaging in a minimal amount of exercise does make you feel happier. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about this. The other thing we're also not great at as a society is eating well, and eating healthy foods. And even if you hate cooking, now there are tons of ways to kind of I've seen a lot of these YouTube videos about meal prep and how you do it all in one day for the week and plan things out ahead of time, which is a little bit of a pain, but you feel better after you do it. And once you get into the habit of doing it, it won't be so much of a pain anymore. And it's definitely a form of self-care to eat foods that make you feel energized and healthy and well. I just did a sleep group a couple of days ago, and I feel like this is another one that we don't value. And I personally don't always practice what I preach, because I'm a late night kind of girl and it doesn't jive well with my work schedule. But the more that you can get yourself quality sleep, you'll also feel so much better. And it's one of the things that I often prescribe to therapy patients who are struggling with anxiety or depression. This time of year, a lot of folks are coming out of the winter blues and seasonal, if they have some kind of seasonal affective thing going on, where just the cold weather in the dark is not great for them. So getting outside and getting some sunshine or getting some bright light in the morning, or if you work in a kind of dark office all day, making sure that you spend a little bit of time near a window or taking a walk outside can help with your sleep. And just making sure that you have a good sleep routine. So, whatever that means for you, if it's white noise, or making sure you go to bed at the same time every night, or investing maybe in a nice fancy pillow that helps you sleep, or comfy sheets, but something to help you feel more motivated to go to bed and to get good quality sleep is going to help you. And there's some other good ideas here for ways that you can kind of take care of your physical body and wellness. And my personal favorite is emotional self care, because it's one that we also neglect. And the number one thing that I think is difficult for people to do, and this goes along with my preaching of assertiveness, is learning how to say no when we need to. And it's not a skill that's easy to master at first, and it might take some practice. But learning how to say no when you're overwhelmed or asking for help when you need it is one of the best ways that you can engage in emotional self care. I'm also a big fan of mindfulness and living in the moment. There are many different ways to practice doing that that don't involve a crazy 20-25 minute meditation, but even just a minute or two of quiet reflection where you're noticing the things that are going on around you, or appreciating being outdoors, or appreciating some beautiful thing you have in your house that you love, can be a form of mindfulness. I'm also a big fan of practicing relaxation in whatever form that takes for you. There are many physical benefits to scripted relaxation, or now the ASMR stuff is really popular. You can go on YouTube and listen to people talking quietly to you if that's your thing, or whispering to you, or listen to a script for a progressive muscle relaxation that teaches you how to tense up and then relax. Even for 5 minutes a day can make a really big improvement on your mood, and there's actually physical benefits for it as well. It's been proven to help fight some of the things that stress does to your body. So lower your blood pressure, improve your blood flow and digestion. So mindfulness and relaxation are great ways to take care of your emotional self-care, and they also kind of fall under the spiritual self-care realm as well. The other thing I'm a big fan of is break times. And when I was a kid, before it was ridiculous to try and get a day off of school without having 50 doctor's notes or whatever, my mom used to tell me that it was okay to take a mental health day here and there. So if I was feeling overwhelmed, especially when I was a teenager, with either things that were going on with my friends or pressures at school, sometimes I would say I need a mental health day and I need to just stay home today and watch TV and relax. And it made a big difference when I could do those things. And I still try to do that as an adult. Just a week or two ago, I took a Monday off the morning of, because it was so beautiful outside and I just wanted to take my daughter somewhere. And I think that that was a really great self-care activity for me, and helped me to recenter and get a nice 3-day weekend kind of off the cuff. And it really helped me. Also, taking break times. I talked about how difficult it is to disconnect now, but I've prescribed a number of people to put their phone in a basket during meal times, or put it away for an hour a night. You aren't going to miss anything, to really give yourself a chance to decompress from the stresses of being constantly connected in the digital age. The other thing you can do is practice gratitude and just be thankful for the things that you have in the morning. I have a friend who every morning writes down 3 things that she's really thankful for, even if it's something really silly, like, I'm thankful for this cup of coffee. I'm thankful to have my job today, and I'm really thankful that the sun is shining outside today. Or I'm thankful for this person that I have in my life. And the more we can be thankful for what we have, the less we worry about the things we don't have, and it helps to put things in perspective for us. So it can be really a useful way to kind of recenter yourself and your emotions. If you're a journaler, you like to write, again, there's tons of different ways to do that. And positive self-talk and affirmations are great. I've seen a lot of videos in recent years of little girls, especially, saying self-affirming things to themselves in the mirror. People always think they're really cute and sweet, but there's actually some science behind that, that even if you don't believe it when you say it, if you fake it till you make it a little bit, or smile real big, it does help boost your mood and make you actually maybe feel like you want to believe some of those things. So if you can wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and tell yourself that you can do it today, and that you're worth it, and that things are not as bleak as they seem, it might help you to kind of take better care and improve your mood. Okay. And the relational or relationship self-care is also one that I think is a little more challenging to think through ways that this is maybe meaningful for you, or that this may be more challenging for you, especially if you find that you have difficult relationships with others or a lot of caregiving responsibilities. It can be hard sometimes to even find the time to do this. If you're a single parent and you just don't have that many opportunities for time alone, you might have to work a little bit harder at how you can do this or manage this micro time that you do have during the day, and find the best uses for those times if you feel like you need that time alone. And again, as an extroverted person, I do still sometimes like to have time to myself to decompress or watch a show I want to watch, or whatever it might be. But I do have to think about how to ask for those things when I need them, and how to be able to schedule them into my day. And it's also important to learn how to best communicate your needs to other people. I always say you're not in control of anybody else but yourself. So you can't force people to act or be a different way, but you can control the way that you relate to and talk to other people. And you absolutely are well within your rights to kind of communicate either a need to be alone, or a need for closeness, or a need for somebody maybe to be a little bit more sensitive to you if that's something that's bothering you. Setting boundaries is also a way to engage in self-care, and something that's really hard for us sometimes to do. This past year has been a tricky one for boundaries, because a lot of people have very different feelings around the pandemic and what they feel comfortable doing. And it's hard for some people who maybe are a little bit less able to communicate their needs, to say when something's uncomfortable or when they don't want to do something. So being able to kind of think through what are the things that are important to you and that matter can help you to establish those boundaries and figure out ways to communicate your needs to other people about them. And for some, like me, actually scheduling time to see friends or family, especially I have a lot of friends who are not nearby, not close in proximity. So it's been great to reconnect with some of them over the past year, because I crave that so much that I've reached a little bit deep into my social notebook to kind of reconnect with some folks I hadn't in a while, which has been really great and really helped me to boost my mood and fill my social cup a little bit more. Okay. And there's also this idea of spiritual self-care. And when I say spiritual, I don't necessarily mean religion, although for some people, religion is a very fulfilling and useful way to practice self-care, both because churches can be a terrific community, or places of worship can be a wonderful community and source of support, and also because prayer and that sort of um, ability to connect to your soul and sort of a higher power, or things that are really powerfully meaningful to you, can also boost your mood and bring you comfort and support when things are struggling. But other people feel like spiritually connecting can be connecting in nature or meditation, or whatever is useful to you. I have a friend who's really into crystals and lighting candles and aromatic oils, and that is her spiritual space. And other friends who enjoy different ways to kind of connect with their soul, or whatever kind of is meaningful to them. So that can be something else that you can do to really improve that part of your life. Okay. And many more ideas. So when I say self-care, it's useful for me to kind of organize them into those categories, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end all be all. There's many ideas here, but take a trip. Right now, micro trips are great. Drive a few hours, see where you end up. Go someplace familiar that you miss. Get takeout from a place that maybe you haven't had in a long time. Take on a new hobby. A lot of people this year have been learning new hobbies at home because of the pandemic, or take a class online. There's a ton of now virtual museum tours and classes that you can take if that's something that's useful for you. And it's healthy to exercise your brain and organize your space and your life, and schedule a time for it if you feel like you need to. So you know yourselves best and know what sorts of things are going to work for you. So as I've given you kind of all these ideas for how you can engage in self-care, I hope you're also thinking through what this might mean for you and in your own life. There's also this idea, and some of this comes from more of a psychology perspective, that there are different types of self-care that are a little bit more enduring or longer lasting than others because they have effects that kind of go on long term. So starting an exercise regimen or practicing some form of meditation might be a way to actually improve your mood long term because you're creating a new healthy habit that's restructuring your brain and altering your body a little bit. And sometimes that can really help us, but it's more of an investment. And some people are not going to be able to do that. However, temporary self-care are these little things that you can do that may be not as long lasting, but if you're having a really tough day, having a playbook of these things that might be able to help you will be tremendously useful in coping when things are maybe not great. So having that list of people you can always call or text or FaceTime if you need to talk, or knowing that there's a particular musician or song or something that you can watch or play, or take a bubble bath or a nice shower to decompress, can also be forms of self-care that help you cope in those moments. And I did want to take just a minute to talk about, I feel like this has been overlaying the conversation around self-care, and it's definitely amped up what to do during the pandemic, even though I'm hoping that we're reaching more of an end and it seems like there's some progress towards that. There are a lot of things that this is kind of creating for people and has continued to create. And right now, more than anything, it's this fatigue because it's been going on for so long. And the best way to kind of cope with that is to engage in strategies to boost your mood and help you to feel better. And now that the weather's warming up, there are also some options for getting outdoors or going new places and seeing new things. Being able to socially distance outside, if that's what you're most comfortable with, can be really useful. And better managing just the anxiety and worry and feeling like you've lost time has been something that's a real struggle for people. If you're working the healthcare profession too, this past year has been a really challenging one and continues to be challenging for those folks, and finding this balance. So I'm excited that there will be a webinar on work-life balance in a couple of weeks, and I'll definitely be attending that one. But finding that balance between the things you have to do and the things you feel like you absolutely are responsible for, and also ways that you can slow down and relax and recenter, is really crucial. So think about what has been stressing you out or causing you some difficulty over the past year. And maybe it's some of the things I mentioned here, or maybe it's not and it's something else, or maybe you're feeling like I'm hopeful and the weather's warming up and it's not bothering me so much. But this has been an added layer of stress to a society that's already pretty stressed out this past year. So taking the time to figure out what might help you feel better day to day, or what sort of self-care strategies you can engage in, will really be useful for you. Okay. I feel like sometimes I've had clients or students, a lot of students I work with, I need to tell to engage in some self-care because they work too hard, to kind of count whatever you need to count as self-care. And this might be different for person to person. If you're a really high energy person that does a lot in a day, it might just be 5 minutes that you take to do something you don't normally do that's self-care. Or maybe it's the act of being able to complete your to-do list in a day that counts as self-care. And it doesn't have to be something that's expensive or indulgent, although it can be, but it might only be just taking 2 minutes to walk outside and appreciate being out in nature, or having your cup of coffee in the morning, or a piece of chocolate after dinner at night. So in thinking about what self-care matters most to you, think about what brings you the most pleasure in life and what helps you live your best life. What are the things that you enjoy doing the most and that really boost your mood the most? And that'll help you to figure out how you can do more of those things, or find other things that are fulfilling to you kind of in the same domain. Okay. And I've also seen some articles about this, and I read an interesting one while I was thinking through what I would talk about today a few weeks ago, about people who say, I hate this idea of self-care. And I hate it because it's smaller than the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, what kind of a person do you want to be day to day? And how can I do that in any small or large way. How do I want to be remembered, or how do I want other people to view me, and how can I act in ways that make me feel like I'm being true to those values? So in the day-to-day minutia, we can kind of lose sight of that bigger picture stuff because we're stressed about work or worried about our kids, and we're not thinking about life as a whole and the type of life we want to lead. So you can ask yourself too about how you want to treat others or how you want to treat yourself. And also just kind of the golden rule. When someone else was if someone else in my life was struggling, how would I help them, or what would I say to them, or what would I do? And then when I'm struggling, how can I do that for myself? And that's something that as a society we really have a hard time with, because we don't value our own emotions or feelings or thoughts as much as we value relating to other people as social creatures. And knowing what you value and what's meaningful to you can help you kind of work towards this best life. And probably the most important aspect of self-care is learning how to be compassionate to yourself and build the relationship you have with yourself. So instead of worrying about evaluating the things you don't have, so you're on Instagram and you're looking at celebrities and wishing you had that life, or wishing you had the money to renovate some part of your house, or wishing that you were better at your job, or feeling like you're a failure as a parent. We don't need to do all of that as much as we need to accept ourselves the way that we are. And if there are things that we want to improve, think of ways to improve them. So in viewing ourselves with a little bit more kindness and compassion, you'll be better able to kind of let yourself indulge in these little pleasures or little joys or self-care that will ultimately help you feel like you're living a better life and feeling like a better person. Okay. So now I'd like you to take a few minutes before then we'll spend a few minutes on our Jamboard. So I've mentioned a lot of things about self-care and gotten you to think about self-care, but what do you already do? And if you want to put this in the chat, I'd love to hear from you, or if you want to share on the Jamboard, you can. And what are things that you love about yourself or that you find are real strengths for you? Instead of worrying about your shortcomings, what are the things that you do really well? What routines do you already have that seem to be really working for you? Maybe you're engaging in self-care without realizing it. I also found that because I don't drive in my car as much working from home, I used to listen to some different radio shows and music and things in my car that I wasn't doing as much, and I was missing it. So I had to find a way to do that at home. But that was a little indulgence I kind of didn't realize that I had on my commute to and from work. And that was something I had to add to my routine. So what could you do to help you improve that? Or what would you like to change? And that can help you get started on your self-care plan. And for some of you, you might not need a formal plan, but if some of you are really busy and having a hard time, having a plan can really help you before you get to that burnout phase, because you'll have something in your back pocket to use when you need a strategy for dealing with something challenging that comes up in your life. And having a plan can really help you stay on track. And really all you have to do is Google self-care plans, and there's about 1 million of them. You could even find a couple of these, like this checklist that's here. There's tons of them on all sorts of blogs, because this is such a popular topic right now, that you might even be able to find something you can put up on your fridge and reference. Or I get a lot of pleasure out of writing things down on my daily to-do list and crossing them off. So you might be a person that really enjoys that as well. And then say, like, I have a goal to do 3 of these things today, and see if you're able to do it. Or I have a goal to do 1 of these things this week, if that's what you feel like you have space for. But having some sort of a plan can really help you stay on track. And so as we've been talking, I've been asking you to think about ways that, or areas that you feel like, hey, maybe I need a little bit more self-care there, or maybe I'm doing really well with work and I feel confident that that's a place I don't need to practice any self-care, but I'm really struggling relationally right now because of X, Y, and Z, or my health is not the greatest because I haven't been as active since I've been at home, and I haven't been working out or engaging in physical activity, or I'm not eating well because I hate going to the grocery store, or whatever it is. And as you kind of create these lists, and they can be mental lists, you don't have to write it down if you're not that sort of analog person. What can you try? What is something, one or two things that you'd be willing to try or that you'd like to try that might help you with your self-care? And what barriers do you think you might face? So if you really want to take a bubble bath, what's something that might get in your way of doing that? And it might be like, well, the only time I can do it is late at night because I have to take care of my kids all day. And if I do that, I'm going to be too tired, so I might not want to do it. And so what's a barrier that you could overcome, which is maybe, well, maybe one night I'll ask someone to help me out with giving my kids a bath, and I'll take that time right after they're putting them to bed or right before to take 10 or 15 minutes for myself, or whatever it is. Or are you the type of person that's going to beat yourself up for trying to engage in one of these activities? And you can maybe record a little self-motivational talk or a little YouTube video of yourself reminding yourself that you deserve some self-care and that you're worth it. So whatever sort of barriers you think you might have, what are your proactive ways to overcoming them? And share your plan with other people and get them involved and help them to practice self-care, because helping others can also really boost and improve our mood. And ultimately, just be kind to yourself and flexible and realistic about what you can do. Set yourself up for success. And even if that means a small 5-minute thing a day, that's how you get started. And if you're not a big planner and you feel like, I don't want to write all this stuff down, I don't want some complicated thing on my fridge, I just want to feel better day to day, there are tons of little 3 to 5 minute things that you can practice. A great example is just set a timer and do something you like until it runs out. So 15 minutes a day, put a timer on your phone and put your phone somewhere where you can hear it but not see it, and read a book or do whatever you want to do. If you like the time in the morning, just wake up a few minutes earlier so that you have some quiet time to yourself to enjoy some sort of activity. Another easy thing to do if you're a phone savvy person is make an album of your favorite pictures and look at them once a week, or favorite memories that you have, or a favorite concert that you really loved. Watch them perform on YouTube or something like that. And just choose one thing to try each week. There are also so many now apps and websites and all kinds of things. Like if you want to learn about mindfulness, you can download Headspace, or there's a number of them for free to practice little 2 or 3 minute meditations. And there's tons of them on YouTube as well. So think outside of the box for ways that you can kind of work this out. And the last thing I want to do, whoops, let me end my show here, is do a Jamboard together. And I'll show you what that is. All right, so I'm going to put the link in the chat, but let me show you how this works quickly. And I have done this in a previous presentation, but I think it's worth me sharing it quickly again. So a Jamboard, here's what it looks like, is a shared workspace that we can use to kind of write ideas or thoughts that we have. And I'd like us to come together as a self-care activity for the last few minutes today and share some of your self-care tips or things that you want to try, or things that you're now inspired to do, or struggles that you're having here in this shared space. And the way to use Jamboard, so here you have a pen, you can draw a heart or write something else. You can erase it if you don't like it. The sticky notes are really easy to use. You can pick a color and write something about self-care or some sort of activity you want to do. Play with it here, make them bigger, smaller, tilt them around. This is a way you can pull into Google. So you can go to a Google image search here, or if you have something on your computer to share, you certainly can. And you can pick a picture or something that's meaningful to you to put here. So that's how you use it. There's text boxes. So I'll let you all play around with it. But what I'm going to do is drop the link in the chat, and then I'll leave it open on my screen so you guys can give it a try. Whoop. Now the link's getting away from me. Here it is. And when you join it, it should, unless you're connected to your Google account, it usually comes up as an anonymous name. So you don't have to worry about what you're putting on there. All right. So I just dropped it in the chat. And I'm going to go back and clear this. And I see somebody joined already. So feel free to put a few things on there, and I'll share my screen so we can, it's my favorite thing to watch them. I see some people have joined, so don't be shy. I'm going to work on it too. And we'll spend a few minutes on that. And then if people have questions or thoughts that they're having, you can pop them into the chat. Okay, let's see if I can find some self-care music to put on while we're working on this. Because listening to music can also be self-care. I'll put on some relaxing sounds. And don't be shy. And I do know some of you might need to leave, so I can keep the board open for a while. I know it's very soothing for me. And I did just see a question come up. So I have a friend who doesn't take time for self-care. Do you have any tips for encouraging them to take that time? Yeah, it's a really tricky one, right? Is getting other people to know what to do in those moments, or giving them the option to. And maybe as a friend, having a frank conversation with them about it, or asking them to join something that you're already doing. So I'm going for a walk this afternoon. Would you want to come with me? Or I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee. Can I pick something up for you and come by? And maybe lead by example. But we can't force anybody to do something they don't want to do. So maybe talking about those benefits, or brainstorming, or asking to be an active partner could be a way to kind of get them to be more open to the idea. But it can be really tough. A lot of people have a hard time putting themselves first. This board looks great. And someone else asked if the PowerPoint will be available, and I'm sure that it will. Yeah, this Jamboard looks amazing. So I will leave that open. You're welcome to kind of keep working on it. Okay.
We can send the PowerPoint out when we send out the eval.
Great. Any other questions folks have? I mean, we do have a little time, so I'm not trying to rush you. But I also want to respect people's time so that they can engage in self-care if they need to. Oops.
Hey, thank you so much, Bree, for this wonderful presentation on self-care. I know we're going to leave the Jamboard open for a few minutes for those of you who would like to continue adding what you like to do for self-care, or what you will be doing for self-care. We will leave that open.
And I did just see one other comment that I thought was worth reading out here. And someone noticed too, there's also a lot of stress in now at the end, hopefully the end of the pandemic, how to return to the way that things were. So returning back to the office or being more in person, and that's very true. So I think we all need to be gentle with ourselves and gentle with other people in any times of transition, but especially now since it's been such a weird year and so hard to readjust back to the way things were. So thank you, Terry, for pointing that out.
Well, thank you again, Bree, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy lives to be with us. But again, the Jamboard will be open a little bit longer for those of you who are interested in participating in that. So thank you again.